Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are here with Andrew Smith, the managing director and co-founder of Savory Fund, which partners with a wide variety of restaurant concepts with just a few locations, and then they provide capital and operational frameworks to help them scale to over 60 units and absolutely explode in sales. Andrew and his wife have been doing this for north of 16 years and have an incredible amount of knowledge and wisdom to share with our industry. Andrew, I'm so excited to have you with us today. Thanks for joining and sharing your story with us.
Of course. Always good to see you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I think, we were just reminiscing. I first met you about 7 years ago when I launched an online ordering business with some marketing tools built in. And you were so kind to give this young budding entrepreneur time and feedback. And I remember we dove a lot into the industry and what's on the horizon and the different trends. And boy, how things have shifted since then.
Totally different. We got put on our back, didn't we? From when we were talking before. Things seemed so simple, didn't they, in 2015, 16, 17, 18? I mean, it was just blissful. Everything was up and to the right. Everybody was making money. You could build things for half the cost. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, and here we are still cranking away. And I mean, you've made some big shifts through the years from like the Four Foods Group experience and operating and managing that into, the Savory Fund. Before we go into details too far, maybe can you share a little bit more about your background and the story behind Savory Fund and how you got to this point?
Yeah, it's kind of a unique one just because a lot of times people find themselves in careers that they didn't really foresee themselves in, earlier in their lives. And this is for sure for me too. I never started my business career thinking I'm going to own restaurants and be a private equity guy in restaurants. I just never thought that. I wouldn't have laid that out in a million years, but I actually started my career in tech in 1998, 1999. I started my first tech company. Believe it or not, Shane, it was a streaming media business. And so streaming media didn't exist in 1996, 1997. So I jumped on the bandwagon and started creating a codec. And that was my first business. But sold that to a public company years later, made it through the dot-com bubble, started a tech company that was in financial software and sold it to one of my clients a couple of years later. And then my last one was a construction software for home builders and tower builders. And crazy enough, Don Trump was my client all the way down to local home builders. So it was a fun time. I was private equity backed by a very large private equity firm out of San Francisco. Took on tens of millions of dollars in private equity funding, and I just thought that I was on the top of the mountain. Right, I could not go any further up. And I remember my wife, Shauna, at the time was the wife of my two toddler boys, and she came to me and she said, "I'd like to do something more than just be a stay-at-home corporate wife," which she was an incredible partner to me as an entrepreneur, as you probably, Shane, have experienced yourself. You have people around you that you're like, man, I am not alone. I lean on everybody around me. And that was Shauna for me. And she came to me and she said, I'd like to do something more. And I said, well, what would you like to do? I'd love to support you. And she said, well, I'd like to open a restaurant. And in my mind, Shane, I was like, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Like, why would you ever do that? They all fail. Nobody makes money. But what came out of my mouth, Shane, was, I think that's a great idea and I would love to support you. And that's the reason why we're still probably married for 25 years, is because you do support your spouse and no matter what they want to do. But we started building our first restaurant, and I was still the CEO of my tech company. And here, life could not be better. And in 2008, we opened up our first restaurant in October of 2008. And that was right in the middle of the next crash. It was the financial boom or bust, and it was melting down, and my life was on fire. And I was like, we're going to open up this restaurant, and it's going to be a complete failure. And long story short, it was a huge success in the middle of a horrible recession, which really got me thinking, like, why in the hell is that market so stable, yet my tech industry is again going through another dot-com bubble per se, where the pressure was on us. And I watched Shauna have so much success in the business that she was running, and it actually made cash, which I'd never seen before as a tech company. And in 2009, we ended up selling that business. And I called my wife up and I said, hey, they can keep me on, or I can come join you and do something different. And she gave me a shot and she hired me as a dishwasher. And so I went and I started cleaning dishes for the very, very first job I had. And then I made pastries and I worked the register and I did everything in the restaurant business because I wanted to learn everything I could. Fast forward now, Shane, and we can talk about it more in depth, but we started with one restaurant and we call our career kind of a series of moonshots. We said, let's do 5 of these. So we did 5 of them, and then we're like, let's do 10 of them. And then we did 10. And one thing that we realized is we really had to build a team of people that knew better than us what we were doing around us. And so we started hiring and building a team, and that was called the 4 Foods Group. And we pivoted in 2018 when we decided to not use the bank of Andrew and Shauna and friends to fund our growth. And we decided to stand up a private equity fund, which we did in 2018. I raised $100 million and bought 5 brands. And then another $100 million fund was raised in 2021 and bought 6 brands. And then we just kicked off Fund 3 at the beginning of this year for $200 million and are about 70% raised. And we have already bought our first brand in that. So I don't know, 16 years, over 450 restaurants and about $2.5 billion in sales. I think that we've done something pretty special. And sometimes we fail to pause and see what we've done, but that's what we've done so far.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful story from, the tech world to your wife really spearheading all of this. Yeah. And, you getting dirty with the dishes all the way through billions of dollars in sales. I think that description of a series of moonshots is absolutely the case. And through those experiences, you have experienced patterns of how to put together frameworks that help these brands to grow and explode and do it efficiently. And to your point, something that can actually spin off cash, which, is often mind blowing for us tech guys who live in a world where we just burn through the years.
Which one of these days, someone's got to figure out a better way in tech. But you're right. For us, it was always how long is my runway before it comes to that cliff, And you always got to raise until you can continue to build. And listen, you're doing it the right way, Shane. But yeah, the tech era, and I'm still an investor in tech, and I still love it. And that's how I kind of scratch my itch of tech, Shane, as I invest into tech. But I still look at it and go, what the hell are we doing? We got to start making money sooner or later.
Yep, for sure. And that's so awesome that you've done that repeatedly over and over and over again in this restaurant industry. Now, you've obviously specialized in taking these small local concepts with just a few locations and helping them to absolutely blow up and to scale and grow and do that efficiently. I'm curious, what have been some of your favorite marketing techniques and strategies that you've employed across your portfolio through the years that you've found to be really foundational to that success?
Yeah, marketing, I actually have a degree in marketing. And a lot of times marketing, you're looking at kind of your omni-channel of things that you do for a brand to hit the different eyeballs and then to have, repeat visits from your customers through, that connection. And in my mind, I always think that marketing is something that you do kind of on the periphery of a business. It's the way that you're perceived and what you market out. And what I would say is that in this industry, especially more so now, Shane, marketing for us is really inside out. It's not the outside and what you push out to the world for what people should perceive. Because if you do that and you're not focused on what the actual business is doing when the customers walk in, you've really blown your dollars for the wrong reason. So what we've really focused on over the years with all of our brands is, are we executing for the person that's standing right in front of the cash register? And if we're not, there's really no sense in marketing the business because you're not prepared for it. So when Savory gets involved in any brand, we really look at a business and say, well, does it have the underbelly? And we call it the underbelly because that's really what Savory is we look at the foundational principles or the underbelly of a business. We didn't create the business on any of these. We're not the founding, partners. We're not the ones that curated the menu and the vibe and the experience of the restaurant. But we do understand what an underbelly is and what is required to really then stand up a regional or multi-regional brand and soon to be, a national brand. And so if you look at it, you say, well, do you have the right leadership? Do you have the right systems? And do you have the right people, right? So people, process, and system is really what we look at in each business. And that's the underbelly of every business. And if you have the right leadership, the right people per se, they're going to have the right people in each of the restaurants so that the experience is concrete and it's consistent across the brand. The other thing is systems. Do you have the right systems in place so that when people come in, you can give them, the loyalty program that they expect so that they can have, concurrent visits and they actually feel part of the fam. And then really the last thing is just the process that you're using too. And so that's what we really focus on. And honestly, those three things are actually part of your marketing program, though, Shane, because again, we're in the hospitality business. And if you walk in and your experience sucks, it does not matter what your billboards say or what your TikTok's doing or what it's showing or how great it is. If it doesn't match when you walk in those restaurants, and I know as patrons, Shane, you're like, that doesn't match what I saw on TikTok or what I was told because the experience was awful. So we really focus inside out.
Yeah. And that's so crucial. We talk about this all the time because, my company does like SMS marketing. So we're part of that pushing out experience to drive the repeat visits. But when we're talking to new customers, we always explain if you don't have the fundamentals of your business, no amount of marketing is going to save you. If anything, it's going to drive you into the ground faster.
Even faster.
Because you just aren't set up for success. Now, if you have that underbelly, like you put it, then you can use marketing as an accelerant and get people back in having that repeatable, great experience over and over again. But without that underbelly, no amount of marketing is going to help. And so, you mentioned once that underbelly is there and it's the people, the processes and the systems are really functioning well, how then have you best, amplified that experience to get people coming back in more and more frequently and bringing in additional guests?
Yeah, I was going to say loyalty is one of the biggest. I mean, the loyalty systems in the past I thought were pretty clunky. They weren't consistent. They weren't persistent. They weren't stable. And the other problem is that everybody had 50 different ones. And so you had to have 50 different loyalty program cards or punch cards or whatever. So, I mean, we've really evolved and that. And I knew that technology would always kind of, evolve that whole segment of the industry. I think it's gotten a lot better. To make it simplified for your guest is probably the most important, right? When you market to your guest, make it super simple what the call to action is, and then how they can follow through and actually redeem whatever you're showing them. We're not huge on couponing within our business. We think that if you do that, you train your guests to be a coupon brand, and so they wait for the next coupon. But offers and promotions absolutely work to get people in to try something that's new and is an LTO. Using a loyalty program to talk to your loyalty guests through, that platform has been very effective for us to get transactions back in. The other thing that's probably been the most important, or probably the last 18, 24 months, I mean, traffic is difficult in this industry right now. Everybody's fighting for traffic. People have less money in their wallets. And for that reason, you have to give them value. So marketing value. And when I say that, not cheap food, people don't necessarily want cheap. Yeah. They want value. It's a very different word, isn't it, Shane? Like value and cheap are two different things. I don't want to get less food. I don't want to get crappier food. I want to get more food for my dollars. And that's really what it is. Or a better quality food for my dollars is what people are looking for. So believe it or not, marketing is communicating with your guests in a very simplistic way. But when then they actually buy it, part of marketing is executing on the value and the perception of value of what you get when you spend those dollars. So that's what I would focus on.
Yeah, I love that. When you've tested different strategies throughout the brand, how have you actually confirmed what's working? Because often that's one of the big questions. Any restaurant owner out there has tried a lot of different things from a marketing perspective and hasn't really known if this works or not. So they just cycle through them, which it can be devastating on your margins if you do that the wrong way. How have you gone about testing new things throughout the brand and then identifying what is that simple message? What are people responding to, and how does that actually work?
I think one thing about marketing, especially in this industry, is that it's always changing. So I would say that the best predictor of the future is the past. We always know that. We all have heard that statement in life. And if in the past you've used something like mailers, or if you used a billboard, or if you used an email marketing campaign and you're not seeing results from it, or you're not seeing the sales tick up from those efforts and those costs, the future is probably going to be the same of what you've experienced in the past with those efforts, right? So I think it's probably ludicrousy or insanity to continue those programs. My thought is always be pivoting until you see what your guests actually respond to, and lean in more and heavily into that. I believe that the whole world has kind of shifted toward this whole, you got to be on TikTok, you got to be on Instagram, and you got to sit there and show your food. And I don't know, for our brands, we do that because people want to see what you have, and they'll walk in and, they'll grab their phone and they'll say, I want this, and they'll show their phone and then they'll point to it. So it is effective, but it cannot be all your eggs in one basket, because there's so many TikTok and Reels and Instagram posts out there, and Facebook and everything else, that we're really all being just kind of lost in the noise. And so again, I think that the thing that you have to do is not only communicate with them, through those methods, but once you actually have those methods in their mind, they come in, they try your food, you got to get them hooked onto a loyalty program so you can communicate with them as one of your most valued VIP guests and family members of that brand now. You think about the where your sales come from, 20, 30, 40% of your sales come from your top 10, 20% of your customers. You want to get those diehard customers that come into you once or twice a week. For a brand like Swig, we want you, Shane, coming in 3 or 4 times a week, because it's a beverage. I mean, you got to drink something every day. We want to get at least 3 or 4 of those drinks a week. So at the end of the day, we're going to focus on the people that are the most devout customers, because that's where your marketing dollars are going to turn best for repeat sales and increased margins. As if you get your diehard customers coming back more frequently. It is so expensive to go out and get brand new people to come in and try you, and you do it off of a coupon, because you don't know if they're ever going to come back if they came in just for that coupon.
Totally. And that's where, we see this a lot, where there are coupon brands and they try to incentivize their repeat guests with these big, massive deals, which just cannibalizes yourself. Yeah. These are people who like you and love you. They actually don't need a super steep discount to come back. They just need to have you be in the top 5 people that they think about when they're like, oh, I'm hungry, or man, I have that craving for a soda. You just need to be in the top few and be in front of them. You don't have to give them a BOGO or this massive offer.
Your attempt as a brand, and when you market, is to get, we call it the pinwheel of options. And the pinwheel of options, Shane, is when you and your spouse or your friends or your coworkers go and get in a car. What do we all do? We all go, so what should we get? And we all go through the pinwheel. Well, we've been here last week. We were here on Monday. We haven't been here for a while, but you go through the pinwheel of places you like. And all of us are trying to get on that pinwheel. And that pinwheel for every guest is usually 8 to 12 brands that they're going to have on the pinwheel. Now, will they venture out and try something occasionally? Of course. They're always going to go back to that pinwheel. So your job is to try to get on that pinwheel. Well, how do you get on that pinwheel? Well, you have to be known. So make sure that you're out there and you're seen. But when they come in your door, you don't know how many times they've seen your brand or how many dollars you've spent to get them to see you repeatedly before they actually walk in the door to try you now. You have to do everything you can to market the hell out of them while they're in your store, not just keep on marketing for new people to come in your store. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. As you look at the coming years, what are the restaurant industry trends that you've had your eye on, and how are you thinking about navigating the changes and challenges that are coming our way?
Boy, the challenges, every time I think I got a peg, Shane, that the challenges are different. Like I think back about 2020, and people talk about that time as being one of the hardest. It was so hard for us too, Shane, but it was actually one of our best years ever, if you can believe that. We actually profited probably more than we ever had in the previous years. We galvanized as a team. We also galvanized with our customers and our guests. We added more units. We bought 2 brands. We raised another fund. I mean, it was a crazy time for us. And then when I think I got it all figured out, 2023 hits and inflation kills everybody and construction costs are high, contractor gouging happens and supplies are limited. So at the end of the day, you just never know what's going to be thrown your way. My point on what the future is going to throw is be ready to pivot for any and all of it and do it quickly. The people that ask us, well, how did you guys prevail so much in 2020 and 2021? Every single day we sat down, Shane, and we said, well, what's the data that we have that's in front of us? And how do we pivot around the data that we have instead of just going, well, it'll improve? Well, maybe it won't. Maybe the future is never going to be like the past. And so we got to adapt to what information we have. I think right now, the future is going to be better than the past. When I say the past few years, we're already starting to see it stabilize more. One of the things that we all see, and it's really sad because it's also rhetoric that the press is doing that I think a disservice to our industry, is all they're talking about is the units that are closing and the bankruptcies that are happening, everything else. Listen, every industry goes through a shakeup. What the hell does everybody think that is going on with the tech industry right now? It's going through its own cycle and shakeup, right?
Sure.
But with tech companies that go out of business, they just shut off their lights and go home. Within our industry, it's like, oh my gosh, there's these units that shut down and then like the signs come off these big buildings and this and that. So they're like, oh, that industry is so volatile. It's like every industry is volatile at certain points in time. But the Darwinian shakeout that happens and occurs in any industry, including our industry right now, is actually a natural progression of that industry. And what I mean by that is all of these stores and units that are going out of business, they were hanging on by dear life and kind of on the like by their fingernail tips. It's probably good to get those to shut down, to have the new wave of merging brands or good operators or good fundamental businesses to then take those spaces and then open up and redefine what the future is. So I actually feel like the future is more interesting to me. I'm more bullish about it. We're going to invest $250 million of a new fund into it and create some billion-dollar brands out of it because I believe the future is better than the past.
Yeah, it's absolutely bright. 100%. Andrew, this has been such a fun interview and conversation today. Thanks for joining us. How can people follow you and learn more about Savory?
Yeah, super easy. SavoryFund.com. We made it as easy as possible, Shane. And then I'm a LinkedIn guy, so you can always just go on the LinkedIn, Andrew K. Smith with Savory Fund, and I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks again for joining us and sharing your industry knowledge and experiences.
Thanks a lot, Shane. Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.